like while I was in Iraq, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, um, and when while I was just from childhood, I was very much a fan of Muhammad Ali. Um,
Mhm.
and I mean, I remember like having a Muhammad Ali sweatshirt when I was like 6 years old. Uh,
Nice. Having chai is like having a heart to heart with someone without realizing you're having a heart to heart with them. And that's what I've been doing these last few months with Pakistani diaspora all over the world. I want to welcome you to season 1 of Shaam Ki Chai. Assalamualaikum everyone, my name's Nitasha and welcome to another episode of Shaam Ki Chai where I interview Pakistanis doing really cool things. Today we have with us the godfather of MMA fighting from Pakistan, Bashir Ahmed. Thank you so much for being on the show, Bashir.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm really excited to dig into your career, but before we get into that, I want to understand a little bit about what part of Pakistan are you from and when did you move to the US?
I'm from Punjab, from Lahore,
Okay.
and moved to the U.S. when I was, I guess, maybe 2 years old, so quite
Oh,
young.
very young. Okay, so you grew up in the United States. What part of the US did you move to?
Virginia.
Okay, very cool. And were you very connected to Pakistan and close to your culture?
I would say so. Probably the first time I went to Pakistan was when I was 6 years old, and then probably went every year, 2 years from that point on, very regularly. Had big family, Pakistani family, in Virginia. My parents had a lot of cousins there. I had a lot of cousins there, so yeah. So I mean, they're very much connected with Pakistan growing up, and it was a part of my identity.
That's awesome. And so what did you then go to school for out in the US?
I studied. I have my degree. I have two degrees.
Okay.
My undergraduate was in global affairs, or like international affairs, from George Mason, and then I have a master's degree in exercise science from University of Pennsylvania in California, which is two different, very different things, very different subjects. I had just started university at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond,
Okay.
and my roommate, he like he joined the National Guard. Well, what happened is I took a class, like what I thought was a military science class, and it was really a recruiting class for the National Guard, and he gave me a
Oh,
whole bunch of yeah, they gave me a whole bunch of paperwork, and about how the National Guard will pay for university, blah blah blah. I took that back to my to where I was staying. My roommate saw
right.
it, and he joined up. And then soon afterwards, I was like, well, uh, I've always thought about what army life would be like. So if he's taking the plunge, then I guess I will as well.
That's really
So
interesting.
yeah,
Did you enjoy it when you got
yeah,
into it?
yeah. I mean, it wasn't always fun. Definitely boot camp and a lot of parts of army life are not really what you'd envision with me, or but I yeah, I thought it was fun. It was a good experience, but when my contract was up, I wasn't interested in in staying on. I wasn't like I really like counting down the days to get out, but it's like when the time was up, it was up, and it was like it was an interesting experience, but time to move on to other things.
You served in Iraq. How was that experience like for you when you got enlisted for Iraq?
Yeah, I went to Iraq. Well, I got the call up for Iraq in 2003,
Okay.
and I was part of the first, like after the first group that went into Iraq to invade. I was the that part of the first rotation of troops that
Mm,
came in. So I got there in, I think, February of 2004,
okay.
and I mean, it's that's very like complicated question to answer. Like, what was it like serving in Iraq? I mean, to be like 20, how old was I then? I was 22, or turned 22 there. I was
Wow,
21 when I went. Yeah,
young. Yeah.
yeah. So to be a 21-year-old uh, political science major who's from a Muslim background to all of a sudden be in a very like controversial war on many levels, you know.
Right.
So that was, I mean, it was an interesting experience, and I mean, a lot of times it was boring. A lot of times it was really scary. A lot of times it was really depressing. You
Mm.
know, I look back at I kept a journal when I was there, and I look back at it, and actually I was just reading it not too long ago, just a couple weeks ago, and um, it's kind of like reading Catcher in the Rye or something like that. There's a lot of I was pretty pissed off for a lot of it, that's for sure.
I'm
Uh,
sure.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was an interesting experience. It's made me who I am. It really kind of linked in with me wanting to get into martial arts and starting martial arts. So yeah, I mean, it's I don't know what more to say. I was stationed in Mosul, in the north. It's actually the area that the ISIS ended up taking over.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I remember when seeing all the news about that. That was pretty sad to know
Yeah.
that like places that I was familiar with were now ISIS territory.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did it pose a moral dilemma for you being a Muslim?
um, Not so much because um, like my job was as a medic, and so
Got it.
um, you know, regardless of what happens and who gets injured, my job is to treat anybody on the battlefield,
Right.
whether they're U.S. or whether they're um, Iraqis. Now, obviously, the priority will go to U.S. soldiers, and you know, wouldn't be able to treat Iraqis until the shooting has stopped, and think you know I can get to them. But the point being that my purpose and my job in a wartime scenario was to help people. So in that regard, I didn't have um, you know, it kind of uh, took away any sort of conflict that I may have had internally.
Your interest in MMA was or fighting was sparked in Iraq. Can
Yeah.
you dive into that a little bit more? What prompted that interest? I'd love to know.
Uh, I mean, it was a couple of factors.
Mm.
One was just, you know, being a soldier and being in that lifestyle. You know, you learn how to shoot a gun. You learn some basics of hand to hand combat, and so with the kind of the warrior lifestyle, you can say, I got into the I got into wanting to know further about how to
Mm.
defend myself,
Yep.
want to know further about unarmed combat, and also wanted to know about like the philosophy of martial arts.
Right.
Then alongside that, I was like while I was in Iraq, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X,
Mm.
um, and when while I was just from childhood, I was very much a fan of Muhammad Ali. Um,
Mhm.
and I mean, I remember like having a Muhammad Ali sweatshirt when I was like 6 years old. Um,
Nice.
yeah, that's like I think probably the first clothing that I consciously like wanted my parents to buy for me.
That's incredible.
Um, but you know, so those things happened during the Vietnam War.
Mhm.
Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali's like objection to the war. So those things kind of came to the forefront when I was in Iraq, and combined with my newfound interest in martial arts and that situation that I was in as a Muslim in Iraq. it just kind of steered me towards combat sports. Um, when I came back from Iraq, I wanted to learn martial arts, and I wanted to learn boxing. I wanted to learn anything that had to do with fighting.
Right.
Um, and one of the places that I joined was I went to the YMCA, and
Mm.
the instructor there was a former special forces, former federal marshal. I mean, this guy was like kind of your all American superhero. He was significantly older than me. I mean, he was in his 60s, maybe 70s. And for me to come back from Iraq and to be with somebody who kind of served as a mentor, but martial arts was about, um, that really kind of that actually linked from my interest in martial arts to wanting to do something in Pakistan, because
Oh,
the
wow.
effect that he had on me, I remember thinking to myself, well, I would like to have a martial arts dojo, a martial arts camp, a martial arts gym, and help Pakistani youth or help the youth in general. And I kind of envisioned that when I was like much older, like maybe his age, but
Mm.
it ended up happening much sooner than anticipated.
How did your parents take your decision to one enlist and then decide to continue and pursue martial arts as a career?
Well, when I enlisted, um, I think because I had joined the National Guard, there weren't any expectations
Mm.
that I would ever go overseas.
Mm.
Um, and like I said, like I was getting into a lot of trouble, and I was not on the right path.
Sure.
Um, and so for them to see me join the military, I think in some ways they thought, they were confident that maybe it would be something that kind of put me on track,
Right.
which it did. Um, but when it came time to go to Iraq, I mean, like maybe my dad and I may have had some conversations about if there's any kind of internal conflict about how I felt about going to Iraq.
Mm.
But I mean, for the most part, it was mostly concern on their end whether I was going to get hurt or not. Whether I was going to die, whether I was going to come back. So all the other political stuff, really, that was a far, far second priority on their minds.
When did you officially decide to move back to Pakistan and start impact building out the MMA scene over there? And when did you make that conscious decision? And then what was the thought and vision of what you wanted Pakistani MMA to become?
Um, I I went for my sister's wedding in 2006, and
Okay.
there was a small taekwondo school
Mm.
nearby that I went to, and um and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed teaching the kids. I enjoyed the atmosphere of everything, and I had always known, like in my heart, that I wanted to do something for Pakistan, be involved in Pakistan in some way, as you know, even as a kid. And so everything just kind of clicked when I went um, to Pakistan for my sister's wedding,
Mm.
um, and trained at that, or taught, or was part of that taekwondo school, um, which was, I mean, it was super. They didn't even heard of MMA or had any idea what it was.
Mm.
Um, but everything just kind of clicked at that time, and I kind of knew at that point that this was something that I was going to come back to Pakistan, and I was going to, spend some time there, and um, you know, kind of, get let people know what MMA is. And I mean, I honestly, I thought that I was going to be in Pakistan only for a few months. I thought I was going to link up with different gyms, and they're all going to work together, and
Right.
I'd do my part and then just go on and come back to the States and get a job or something like that. But
Sure.
it ended up being much longer than that. ended up being much longer than a few months.
Like you see a lot more Pakistanis getting into MMA now, participating internationally, winning competitions internationally. Where do you see the MMA scene of Pakistan going over the next 5 to 10 years?
Um, I mean, it's just going to keep growing as it is. I mean, I think the most important part for Pakistan and for the MMA scene to develop in Pakistan is for just to be more regularity and more competitions and a better infrastructure
Right.
for people to rise up the ranks in. There definitely needs to be a more robust amateur circuit in Pakistan. Um, and as for like people competing, like what the results might be overseas, there are definitely, like you said, a lot more people competing overseas, and some of them doing quite well. Um, but in terms of someone from Pakistan having a shot at major world title,
Mm.
um, I mean, I don't think that that could even really be part of the discussion for like another 10 years.
Wow, why is that?
I mean, it takes time to learn anything, right?
Right.
So, like when I was in Pakistan, which wasn't really that long ago, that was 10 years ago. Right? At that time, no one knew anything, and even
Right.
I was only like 2, 3 years into having learned martial arts. Right?
Got
If
it.
I meet somebody today who has done martial arts for 2 or 3 years, I'm like, you don't know anything, right?
Hmm.
Like you're a baby in this.
Hmm.
And so for me to be at that stage and then teaching other people, right, the learning curve is a lot slower.
Got it.
And all the new people, they don't have other people to like, other than like myself and then friends that I made who were into martial arts, um, who had a martial arts background, and they quickly caught up with MMA techniques and MMA training and how it's supposed to be done. But regardless, people's partners that they're training with, they don't know anything, right? So after 5 years, right, from that point, when I've become more competent, the other coaches have become more competent, and then you have like some somewhat competent training partners,
Right.
then that's like you've completed from step zero to step one, and that took you 5 years.
Got it.
So then 5 years from there, now you have people who've been training for like 10 years as like
Yeah.
junior coaches or training partners for the new like the new generation
Yes.
coming up, right? And then that just builds upon itself. I mean, if you think about even the development of MMA in America,
Mm.
uh, like in 1993 when there was the first UFC, you can call that the Big Bang of MMA in America.
Right.
Um, I mean, it took 10 years. In fact, I think it took 12 years for the UFC to even hit a modicum of considering it to be somewhat mainstream. I wouldn't even consider it having been mainstream. I don't think the UFC was mainstream until maybe 2010,
Mm.
2012, around there.
Right.
Um, so that's almost 20 years. It took 20 years for it to really get that broad base. And so things move a little bit slower in Pakistan. And I think it just takes time for the sport to spread in such a way that you have a large enough talent pool, you
Mm.
have a large enough group of competent instructors, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have the appropriate infrastructure to have the right ingredients to
Mhm.
make someone who can compete for a world championship.
What have
Yeah.
your biggest career challenges been up until now?
Um, that's a difficult question because, like, what part of my career are you talking about?
You
Like, I
so
was like
whichever part.
athlete.
How
What's
about
that?
your athletic career?
I mean, the biggest challenge is probably I mean, it's multiple factors. One was that I started really late. I mean, I
Mm.
didn't start training until I was like 23, 24 years old.
Mhm.
Um, I, I had pretty much done no sports before that, right? So
Mm.
it's not like I came from a lifetime of wrestling or even a lifetime of running track and field. I went from like zero to wanting to be an MMA fighter, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't make my professional debut until I was 30 years old. Um, so, I mean, at 30 years old, you're probably going to see a lot of the new generation probably retiring, right? So that's when I started.
Right.
Um, and I never had a proper coach. Like, I would
Okay.
have coaches, and that have done a lot for me over the course of my athletic career, but I didn't have that one kind of singular coach bond for a long period of time, especially not in the beginning. I was pretty much self-coached for a while because when I was in Pakistan,
Yeah.
where I was based for the beginning of my career, and most of it really, um, I was the person that everyone looked up to, you
Right.
know, and so I didn't have that person to look up to for myself to kind of mentor me and guide me. I was
Mhm.
kind of alone as the trailblazer, right? And
Yeah.
in the end, like to be in that situation, although that was a difficulty, and in some ways I may have suffered for it in
Mhm.
terms of how far I could have gone as an athlete.
Yeah.
At the same time, to be the trailblazer, it's like I maybe I didn't have the same opportunities to be the best, but I was the first, and I did put it on the map. So, you know, um, being where I am and in the industry and looking back, um, there are very few people who are able to make a name for themselves
Right.
in this sport. Most people, uh, a lot of them, much much better than me,
Mhm.
are going to grind it out and suffer it out in a lot of lower leagues, fighting really hard fights, and taking a lot of damage to their bodies, to their
Yeah.
brain, and then at the end of it, having nothing for it.
Mm. So
So,
what's going through your mind before a fight? You're walking up the path, you're about to step into the octagon. What are you thinking?
um, I am not really thinking anything.
Really? Okay.
Um, yeah, I'm not really thinking anything. I like to say that it's just pure, just like consciousness, right?
Okay.
Because you can't. I don't think that's the time. Like thought for me, like that's it's too slow, right? It's too slow for that kind of where you are um, to be in there in I mean, this would be like 100 years of a life and death situation, right? To
Yes.
be, unarmed combat with somebody who's trying to kill you, but now we have made it into a sport, and we have a
Right.
referee, and it's regulated and stuff.
Sure.
Um, so you don't really have time to think, and so it's just you really are in the moment there,
Mm.
and that's part of why what attracted me and put me into martial arts was because of its ability to have you recognize the present moment, have you appreciate the present moment, and to really feel it in a way that a lot of people may not have the opportunity to.
That makes sense. Is it almost like an adrenaline high as you're walking down?
Mm,
Or is this calm and serene?
yeah, I mean, it's a tough question because I can't. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of both. I mean, like adrenaline definitely plays a part of it because when you watch, right, you would
Mhm.
expect that all that is going to hurt, right? People
Yes.
kicking each other, it doesn't hurt at all. You don't feel anything. You don't feel
Really?
anything. Yeah, you don't feel anything.
Why? This is so fascinating. Why don't you feel anything?
It's the adrenaline. I mean, like you will feel the impact, right? You'll
Okay.
feel the impact, right? Like if I knock on
Yeah.
this desk right here, right? There's an impact, but there's no pain associated with it. It's the same thing, right?
Wow.
Like normally, if someone were to punch you in the stomach or kick you in the leg, right?
Yeah.
Normally, that would probably, I mean, you feel the impact, but you also feel a lot of pain associated with it. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have that. Yeah, you don't have that when you're fighting. Yeah.
That's so I mean, I've seen pictures of you with blood all over your face, and you're saying you don't feel any of that.
You don't feel anything. Yeah, you don't feel anything. I mean, like, and that after the first time that I fought, I mean, after the first time I fought in Thailand,
Yeah.
I kind of realized that this is before, like, it was actually like a source of like comfort, before going in. It's like, okay,
Okay.
this is gonna be tough, but remember, you don't feel
You
anything.
don't feel anything. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
Oh wow. Well, that's good because every time I watch any sort of UFC videos or even the videos I've seen of you or pictures, I
yeah,
always look at that and I'm like, oh, that must have hurt. But now you're telling me you
yeah.
don't feel anything, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, no, you don't feel anything. Yeah, you don't feel a thing. I mean, like, so like my mindset really changes in the locker room when they call out your name. At that point, like, there's no like, if you're thinking about, well, what's going to happen after this, or what am I going to do, like, I think you're kind of in the wrong state of mind. That those things should already be
Mm,
like in your subconscious, like ready to go. It's just really, it's just being aware. If you've heard of like in like Zen Buddhism, they talk about like no mind,
mm,
right? Where like,
okay.
are you familiar with like Zen archery, for example?
No, please tell me more. This is really fascinating.
Well, like in Zen archery, like the purpose of it, I mean, they use archery kind of as a spiritual practice, right?
Okay.
And in it, it's you achieve that kind of spiritual peace, and coincidentally, you also begin to hit the target when you stop
Mm,
thinking about it, right? Because
I
when you're
see what you're saying.
yeah,
Yep.
so when you start thinking about it, you focus on, and this is what I'm going to do, and obviously you have to do that, right? You have to go through
Right.
that path. But you try to reach a level where it becomes unconscious, right?
Mm,
Where
mm.
you're not thinking, and you're in a state of no mind, where you it's maybe you've heard of the term flow, right? Being
Yes.
in a state of
Yes.
flow, yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, when you're in that state to where you're not thinking anymore, you're just absorbed in the moment, and you're able to
Mhm.
do your best because of it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What are your where's your career going to be 5, 10 years from now? Do you have a plan? Where are you headed?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a plan. I mean, I remember from, well, actually, there's two quotes, both kind of relevant to what we're talking about. One is from the uh, the army that I heard is, no plan survives first contact, meaning, you can write a plan, but the minute that you go out there, like, a lot of times the plan goes out the window.
Yep.
And I think Mike Tyson said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I have a plan.
Mhm.
Whether and that a plan can only kind of give you a set of guidelines about how where you want to go. Right, in the end, life will just kind of buffet you, and the waves will take you where we end up going. Right,
Yeah.
but I I look to mentor and build athletes that I hope they can become champions in the future. I plan on building a training center here in Thailand, in
Okay.
Bangkok,
Okay.
um, and I'm sure there'll be lots of Pakistanis that'll be coming over. Um, I want to be expanding my. I have a gym in Pakistan. It's like a charity gym called Shaheen,
Okay.
where it's based in a slum, and we provide education. We have after school tuition there. Um, we're using martial arts as a pathway to create what I like to say good citizens of Pakistan,
Got
right?
it.
So, but I'm just going to be working on that and expanding that, and all these things kind of work in synergy together, right? Um, there might be students from there that will come to Thailand to train with me.
Mm.
Students from there potentially become champions. Then, of course, then the champions are able to now give back to Shaheen, right, and
Yeah.
have that grow. Um,
Okay.
as for myself, I would hope to compete again a
Okay.
few more times. Yeah,
Okay.
but I got to be very particular about how that's going to happen, right? Just um, things are a lot different than when I was 30 years old, or
Okay.
28, 29 years old, and living in my gym, right?
Right.
So,
Are
yeah,
there
different.
specific people you want to compete against or have the chance to fight with?
Not really. If there's one name that I could say, it would probably be somebody that I should have beaten, but that knocked me out just
Okay.
because I was overconfident and over aggressive, and That's a Filipino fighter named Jimmy Yabo.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that was actually that fight. The anniversary of that fight was not too long ago, but
Okay.
that was yeah, that was a a life lesson for me,
Mm.
not to ever overlook anybody,
Yeah.
or to n- get yourself out of the present moment and to be thinking too much about what's going to happen in the future.
Mm.
What's going to
Mm.
happen when I win this fight and everyone's happy, and you know all that.
Yeah.
um so yeah, that's definitely somebody that I would like to fight. um Gosh, if it could ever happen, I would definitely like to fight Amir Khan in an MMA match, but I
Mm.
don't see that happening.
That would be
um
really interesting.
yeah, and when I became interested in martial arts, and I came here, and I think, or like soon after Iraq, came in here like 2006, 2007,
Mm. Okay.
um, and when I trained Muay Thai here, I was like, when this place is, I just kind of felt like it was going to have a permanent role in my life.
Mm.
And how it ended up here now is that when One Championship asked me to work for them,
Mhm.
they wanted me to, actually originally they wanted me to move to Singapore.
Okay.
That was the plan. But for some reason or other, my like the Singapore government has a lot of rules and regulations, and
Mm.
my work pass was declined for Singapore. I mean,
Oh,
everyone was really surprised with that.
right.
But after 6 months in limbo, they're like, "Well, we're opening a Thailand office. Would you like to move there?" And it's kind of funny because they asked me in a way like, "I don't. Are you sure about this? Like, it's not Singapore. I can move to Thailand." I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I've
Nice.
always wanted to live in Thailand." So, um, yeah. So
It was
it
meant
just
to be. Well,
yeah,
my
yeah,
last question is going to
uh,
be a bit different. And I ask this to everybody that comes on the show. We are
yeah,
called Shamki Chai, and that is something that brings us all together. So I would
yeah.
love to get an insight into Shamki Chai at your home and what it's like and what do you guys drink and eat and talk about.
Yeah, well, I mean, because I grew up in the States, like, I don't know
Mhm.
if we really had a Sham Ki Chai, like, kind of ritual. Although I have plenty of Sham Ki Chai in Pakistan.
Tell me
Uh,
about that. Tell me about your Shamki Chai in
so,
Pakistan.
okay, so if you want to think about, like, the most, like, if I associate Sham Ki Chai and, like, memories that go with it, it has got to be with sitting with my dadi, or sitting with my khala being from my dadi's, like my dadi's sister.
Oh, okay.
And
Yep.
yeah, and just having tea, and just like your regular, like cake rusk or
Yep.
biscuit,
Yep.
and and yeah, them just lecturing me about how concerned they are about where I'm going to go in life. Yeah. uh,
That's
so
great.
yeah, that is that's my memories. And me trying to like convince them, it's like, it's okay, don't worry, I'll be fine,
They
I'm
have no
confident
reason
about
to
my future.
worry. You have an incredible career now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Are there Shamki Chai traditions in Thailand? Is that part of the culture?
No, 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 no. They don't drink black tea here. Well, they actually no. Have you ever had Thai tea?
Yes, I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Thai tea is very good. Yeah, but they
Yes.
don't. It's definitely like a morning thing.
Okay.
Well, Thai people drink caffeinated drinks like all day long, but they don't have that same ritual that we do.
We do have Shamki
And
Chai.
this, sure, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bashir. It was great talking to you. And thank you everyone for watching. I will be back with another episode of Shamki Chai soon. Take care. Khuda Hafiz.
Stuff is.